Okay, we're back with Josh. Listeners, if you missed last week's episode, that was the first episode with Josh. We talked about his beginnings and all that stuff. A lot of amazing. Go back and listen to that before you listen to this one and then come back to us. What's going on, Josh?
What's up? How you doing?
Good. We're going to get back into it right now. Yesterday, I was at the pool. Yesterday was Labor Day here in the States, and it was a Monday, and a few people work on Labor Day. That's why it's called Labor Day. And I was at the pool with my kids, and there were a lot of teenagers there, and all of the teenage boys had the same hairstyle. Do you know which hairstyle I'm talking about?
The Edgar. Was it the Edgar?
Well, I don't know what it's called, and maybe this is like why I'm asking you. Because
was it a straight fringe?
Well, yeah, it's kind of a straight. It's I think it comes from Jake Paul or Jake Paul's brother.
Okay, yeah. I was going to say that was my second option. So there's two main hairstyles that are kind of going around for the younger people right now. And it's like an Edgar, which is like a really super heavy crop, but it's like blunt. And then there's that one, which is like a light, fluffy fringe, essentially.
Yes.
Like long hair on top.
Yes, very fluffy everywhere. And ideally, well, one guy called it, like I brought it up to a few people I was with, and one guy called it a flip. And because I guess one of the Paul brothers wears his cap in such a way, and I don't watch their YouTube. You know, I've seen them, so that's why I'm drawing the connection there. Where when they put their hat on, they put their hair, especially in front, they put it down, and then it like flips up, you know, under and then over like the edge of the cap. And then when they take their hat off, you kind of have this thing, kind of a bowl cut, but a little bit longer, and then it just kind of flips up. And there might have been 20 teenage boys, you know, and some teenage girls there, and they seemed like, I don't want to say the cool crowd, but they definitely seemed, you know, socially adept, okay? And every single of these guys had this same haircut, and it was hilarious. So all of us adults in our mid-40s were looking at these kids and kind of chuckling to ourselves because, of course, every generation has their own style. But this one is just so pervasive. And the listeners, I don't know if this is happening wherever you guys are. I'm in LA, of course. This is happening. It's so pervasive. I don't know what this is doing to the hair business. I don't know if this is a haircut that needs to be maintained or whatever. The good part is, and I'm doing a lot of talking, but I'm going to throw it to you in a second, Josh. The thing that's good about it, from my perspective, as somebody who's been in this business for 23 years, is that every single guy cared a lot about how their hair was looking from a shape, or generally from just a shape perspective. I mean, call it a mushroom, call it whatever shape you want, but they all cared a tremendous amount about the shape of their hair. And you can see them all kind of like going up with their fingers and kind of like fluffing it a little bit like that. And even the guys with straight texture were like trying to fluff it into a curly. Okay, so what say you about this whole thing?
I mean, like in a way, like as you said, I kind of like it because we've come a long way from guys just wanting short hair. So, like, I like the fact that they're caring about the shape and exactly how it's looking. It's good. I think that that's where the industry, I think, and to be honest, like I've noticed in California, there's a lot more, like, say, barbershop clients having like longer hair, like softer looks, which is really cool. And I think he's actually spreading. Like, the whole of the US is getting there now, I think, as well. I like it. I think that it's good for the younger generation to care. But obviously, then sometimes as the hairstylist, you get, especially when they want something that doesn't suit them. I think that's the key. But again, like you got like a lot of guys with like straight hair, like straight texture, and they're having like perms and stuff to get that fluffier look. Yep. I don't know whether it's just a fad and like it's just a phase. But I mean, I'm not opposed to it. But I was growing my hair back, and then I buzzed it back off again. So I just normally have a blonde buzz cut. But I was growing it back, and I had, unbeknownst to me, my hair kind of looks like that fluffy hairstyle, which is one of the reasons why I shaved it off, because my wife was like, I know I like the hair longer, but my hair was like, if I had a cap on like this, my hair would be flipping out underneath, exactly like you said.
Perfect.
But I was looking around, and I'm like 30 I'm 30 in January, right? So I was like, look, all these kids with this haircut, they're about 18, 20 at a push. I was like, there is no way I'm walking around with this hairstyle, because I know that I don't look old. So I was like, if with that hairstyle, I will look 20. And I was like, I can't look 20. So
true.
Plus, then we spent a week in Florida, and I just had a wet fringe because it was so humid that my fringe was just getting sweat everywhere. So I was like, no way, and that came straight up. But no, I like the style. It just depends on if it's suitable for the customer, because obviously some people suit it really nicely and it looks really cool, and it depends on what they pair it with. It's when if they want to pair it with like a fade that doesn't suit them, that's when it's going to be trickier for the hairstylist to do.
Okay, we'll talk about suitability. This is and generally, I throw it out there every now and then that I think one place where sometimes the barber community, and at the risk of insulting anybody, which I never, of course, want to do, but offering some sort of something constructive, I think that too often the at least the guy friends that I have, they go out there into the salon and barbershop world. They don't always get their haircut at my shops. They go out there into the world, and they just get mowed down with a number 2 or a number 1 or whatever, and there's no thought put into the shape that's best on their face and their head and their body and their style and all that. And I always say the difference between a $50 haircut and a $100 haircut for a dude, and this, of course, is very similar to ladies in a much more complicated, sophisticated way. The difference between the not so great and the great is that kind of bespoke attention to the suitability. And so you talk about suitability. So what makes that haircut? What are we going to call it? Did we call it anything? The poof? The Jake Paul? What makes that What makes that haircut suitable to a client versus not suitable?
So, in my opinion, I think it's going to suit people with stronger features, is my honest opinion.
Stronger features meaning stronger cheekbones?
Like more... Yeah, like more, not okay, gaunt sounds kind of horrible, but I mean kind of like more like you can see solid cheekbones or solid jawlines, right? Even in terms of like, if you have, I don't know, I'm not sound offensive to anybody, but let's say I had a bigger nose too, right? Yeah. Stuff like that, like pointier things, sharper things.
Versus
things
mine, which is rounded.
Things that look stronger. Things that look stronger. This is why it didn't suit me either, because I've got quite round cheeks. So when I have my beard lined up, I look a lot sharper, so it balances me out, right? But this is why I like a buzz cut, because when I have it cut, I have sharp lines, and it takes all the attention away from my rounded cheeks. When I had the longer, the Jake Paul, essentially, what I found was I didn't like it because the haircut was too soft for my soft features. So I think that it's like, this is when you look at editorial models, like, from a barbering perspective, sometimes people in the barbering industry will look at editorial shoots and they'll be like, the haircut's not even finished. But I'm like, it's a soft image, right? It's supposed to look like that. It's supposed to look lived in and worn. But it suits the model because that's why the model is that way. The model's got super sharp, strong features. So I think like you see like some of the kids walking around and they've got like, because they're kids as well, they're younger, so they've got like slimmer faces and more sharp features sometimes, suits them well. But if you've got rounder features or softer features, I don't think it's going to suit you quite so well because it's just a soft look. And I think that soft looks suit sharp images, sharp looks suit soft images. And I think it's just about that balance between soft and sharp. And that is, to me, that's why I teach barbers too, because I feel that's the easiest, quickest way to give suitability. Because obviously, as you know, there's so much detail you can go into. And you're just saying when it comes to like salon haircuts, there's so much like formalities that can go into like suitability. But in the barbershop, especially with the environment that they're working in, it's so fast-paced that they got to have something they can just quickly reference. So if I'm looking in the mirror at my client and I see sharp features, I'm like, okay, a softer image is going to suit you a little bit better. But obviously, it depends on what they're asking for. If they're asking for the opposite thing to what you think, then it's a professional discussion of why you think of certain things. But I always talk to people that you've got to talk relatively factually. Don't start saying because I think so, because clients, when it's opinion versus opinion, client wins, because the client is right in that scenario of like it's what they're choosing to have. But if it's opinion versus fact, then you've got more of then the client's more likely to listen, is what I'm trying to say. Because I think that sometimes clients, especially if it's a new client, could be quite offended if they come in asking for something and then you just say, no, I think this.
Right.
It's the way you present it to yourself. And you've also got to read the customer. Like I always talk about the fact that in life, you never want to change who you are and your ethics and your morals and like what you believe in, but you always want to change how you present that to people based on who you're in front of. Because depending on the client, you may present what you're trying to say in a different way, but you've got to present it in a way that's going to get them on board. And I think reading people is just as important as being the suitability of the haircut for the whole purpose of this appointment. Because if a client comes in, the reality is for most people in the barbershop, honestly, the whole appointment is 80% about how they feel, not about what it looks like. Because most barbershop clients don't know from Adam what haircut looks like what. They want to feel good more than anything. And I think that obviously the image, the 20% of the image goes into how they feel, but you've got to present everything to them in a way that's going to make them feel good. If you want to change their mind a little bit on suitability, it's how you present the suitability to a conversation rather than just the fact of having it. I think some barbers sometimes feel like I've tried to tell him what he should have, I've tried to tell her what she should have, but in reality, it's like, no, they didn't listen because of how you presented it rather than what you were saying.
I mean, there's so much in what you just said there. I mean, we could have a whole episode just on unpacking what you just said. You know, the delivery of the information, you know, if you can do it, and this goes for anybody in any profession, but especially ours because we deal with humans all the time, that it's next level beauty professional who can deliver what they need to in such a way that makes the client want what they should have, I guess is the way to say it.
Exactly.
And one of my favorite questions for our guests is always, when the client sits in the chair, you're going to have the clients who have a picture and they want this. You know, for a girl, it might be a Barbie picture these days, right? And as the hairstylist, as the professional with a lot of experience, you may look at this client and be like, "Oh God, that's going to look so bad on her," you know, or this guy, you know, is going to sit down. This teenage kid is going to sit down. Boy is going to sit down in your chair, and he's going to have very soft features. Like I have big cheeks. I have kind of a rounded nose. And so this Jake Paul haircut would not look good on me. There were some guys in this group that I saw yesterday at the pool, and, you know, rounder faced guys, and the haircut did not look good on them. And there was one kid in particular who had a very structured, you call it strong features, very structured face, very defined cheekbones, very thin nose and all that. And it looked great on him. Yeah. But the boy, I imagine, especially a young kid, is going to sit in the chair that's 16, 17 years old. He may be kind of round faced like me, and but he's going to want that haircut because all the other kids want the haircut. They're not going to understand the suitability. But what do you do as a barber? You kind of have to give him that haircut, right? I mean,
there's only so much you can do. So I think you've definitely got to talk to them about the reasoning behind it. So but again, I would always talk quite factually still. So I would say, let's say they took a picture of that haircut and they showed a person with that haircut that looked good on. I would describe to them why it looks good. And I would say we can maybe work with a version of it that might suit you a bit better. And so for example, if you want to give the suitability of that, what you could maybe do is you could maybe have the same haircut, but have the fringe a little bit shorter and higher. So almost like crop the fringe off a touch more so that the fringe looks a bit stronger. So it's heavier and stronger. Or you could have it so like maybe we'll do it, but we'll do a slightly, rather than having it like a long scissor cut here with just a taper, maybe we'll do it a bit shorter on top there with a fade so you can see a strong lineup. So like those are ways that you could maybe adapt what they wanted into something that's going to be similar and suit them. But I always say as well that like it's always a three haircut project for me with a new customer. What I mean by that is the first one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to give them my version of their vision. So what they've asked for, I'll give them kind of my version of that. So like if they ask for that haircut and I've talked to them professionally about what I think they should have, and they still want the one that they wanted, that's fine because it's a paying customer, and we'll go for that, right? But if they're, and then the second time, if they liked it, I'll ask them what they like and what they didn't like. So I always ask my clients what they don't like about it too, because it breaks down that barrier of the awkward client not wanting to come back. Because if they don't like one thing, but you've never broken that barrier, they probably won't come back because they'll fixate on that one thing that they didn't like, and they'll be like, oh man, he messed my haircut, blah blah blah, and you're like, really everything else looked good, but apart from that, they'll focus on it and they won't go back because it's awkward to tell you what they don't like. Whereas before they leave, if I say, next time you come back, tell me what you don't like, because I know that obviously I've given my interpretation of it right now, but when you go back, have a play around what you like and what you don't like, come back and tell me. Then next time we can figure out the next step, and we'll probably get closer to a mutual vision. By the third haircut, we should be at a mutual vision. But I think also like there's different barriers to break down in an appointment. I think one of the key barriers to break down in an appointment is just the initial energy with a new customer. And so for me, one of the best ways to do this, because for me, the thing that people think about when it comes to hair professionals is that we think that the customer is questioning, do we know what we're doing? That's what they think. That's what we think in our heads. We're thinking, this customer's probably thinking, do we know what we're doing? Most of the time, all the customer is really going to be thinking is, because they're not going to think you don't know what you're doing. You're literally a hairdresser or a barber working in a hair salon or a barber shop. They know that you clearly know what you're doing. What they're more concerned probably about, and what they don't, I feel like it's more subconscious, but what they're really concerned about is, does the person stood behind me value me enough to do what they do well on me? You know what I mean? Like, they're like, do they actually value, I think that's what's going on in their mind. Do they value me enough to do it well? So what I like to do first is just come to the front of the customer, straight the first thing I want to do, and just ask them how their day's been. So, because normally the first thing you talk about is hair. You'll be like, the first thing you'll be saying is hello, and then talk about hair. Whereas I'll be like, hello, like, how's your day? Like, what's a 1 minute conversation going to do in a 30 or 40 or 50 or hour appointment? I'm just breaking that barrier down first up, because most clients, especially in the barbershop, will be like surprised firstly. They're like, oh, yeah, it was good. And then just ask them how their day's been, what they've been up to. If it's a regular customer, you can ask them how they've been since they last met you. But just coming to the front of them, talking to them about them, and having some interest in them as a person rather than their hair, I think breaks that barrier quite quickly. And then they relax because they trust you. And because they're relaxed, because again, energy is everything. When their energy is good, your energy will be better, because the only time, again, that you cut hair badly, other than when you've got stresses outside of the shop, is when the person in the chair starts to stress a little bit. You know, everyone's been through it, where the customer is looking in the mirror, questioning what you're doing, looking and seeing, is it the length I wanted? Is it what I wanted to do? We don't want that. But it's not because, again, they don't think you know what you're doing. It's because they don't know whether you care enough about them to do it properly on them. So, to me, try and break it as quick as possible.
Yes, and you can communicate that. That's kind of going back to the next level communication that you can have behind the chair. You can give them a sense of trust in you by showing, part of that next level communication is showing that you care and you're focused and all the stuff that you're saying, very important. And I sense in conversations with friends, not in the industry, just kind of out there in the client world, one of the things that I hear from them is that their hairstylist too often goes on cruise control, and they might be having a conversation with somebody else, next to them, a station next to them in the salon while they're cutting, my friend's hair, and that gives my friend the sense that they're not giving my friend the best version of what they can do, to your point. And so there's little things that you can do, again, next level communication, and it's not necessarily just the words that you're saying to the client, but in your behavior, your body language, where your attention is focused in order to give them that sense. Another thing I want to say is that within the client world, and you addressed it a little bit, within the client world, they don't necessarily know that it might take 3 haircuts to get the best result from a new hairdresser. And so whenever I refer a friend to a hairdresser, I tell them, give it 3 appointments. because there is a learning curve. Maybe learning curve is not the right word, but there is a process through which you're both going to go through in order to get, the best result, the best outcome, in that relationship. But they don't, a lot of clients don't think that way. They think it's either the right hairstylist is going to give them exactly what they want on the first try.
But the thing is, I think a lot of hairstylists and barbers think that too, which is the problem. But this is where, I think because barbers and hairstylists sometimes, not all, because again, a lot of them are very aware it's a process of getting to that point. But I think a lot of the time barbers do expect the client to just like what they do because that's what they do. And I'm always been transparent. I was guilty of that when I was a young barber. I used to think that my clients will like the haircut that I do. Now, don't get me wrong. 80% of the clients that you want to have in your book, I think you do want them to be, you want them to agree with what you think is aesthetically pleasing, because otherwise your job is going to be quite painful if you've got to spend every day doing haircuts you don't overly like to do. You need to be doing haircuts that you like to do. But in terms of the specifics and how things look, I think that we can't always expect the customers to want it exactly what we think would look good. It's going to be like versions of that. And that's where that's that 3 haircut process. And that's something I learned over time. I think everyone learns over time. But I think it's an important message for both barber and client alike, or hairstylist and client alike, to really pay attention to. But I also think that it's our job to educate them on that. As you said, you've got to educate the clients on the fact of it is a process, and that is normal for it to happen. And to be perfectly honest, if any barber is going to try and tell a client it's going to be perfect straight away, it's probably not that good hair professional. I'm not saying they're not good technically, but I mean, as you said, in how they carry themselves as a professional, they should be able to educate their client on how long the process of getting that perfect haircut is. Because you, as a good hair professional, really, you want them to come back with little tweaks. You want them to come back saying, right, I loved it, but can we do this? I loved it, can we do this? Because it's always challenging yourself too. You're learning and learning and learning about what different people want. It's what I always do with students. I always say to my students, challenge me. If you think I'm wrong, challenge me. If you think you would do it differently, challenge me. The reason being is not only can I help them and answer the question as to why I maybe would do something different, but also because I can learn then what is the perspective of a different kind of person. What does a different kind of person want? What does a different kind of person understand? And it helps me to get a better picture of the whole of my world. And if you're cutting behind the chair, it'll be the whole of your client base, which is your world essentially.
I want to emphasize, though, that not with everybody, but I would say with most clients, you do have to invite that, because the client is going to be too nervous to challenge the hairstylist, especially 100%. A new one, a new barber. They're not going to feel comfortable challenging them. Challenging is the positive, is the euphemism. It's the positive version of the word. I think what most people would think as that word would be criticizing. And so very few clients with a new barber or hairstylist is going to want to criticize them. So really, as the professional, I think it can be very, very helpful and constructive to invite that sort of not criticism but challenge. And the other word you said is feedback, right? It's feedback. It's positive feedback. And so I think that can really help to build trust with a new client and make them a long-term client, which is what we all want, right?
Exactly. It's just about breaking those barriers, as we said. There's a few different kind of psychological barriers with clients. You've got to get their energy good, then you've got to build trust. And so to me, those are the two main things of a consultation: energy and trust. And you've got to get those into a position where there's a future. But again, to me, it's like anything, any business relationship, or any relationship, personal or business, successful ones are where people can see, or where both parties can see a journey, right? So where people can see there's a journey to be had, the relationship will be successful for as long as there's a journey to be had. It's like, as we see, go back to actual personal relationships. That's where you've got to keep having new things and new experiences. You want to be knowing and planning for the future and doing different things, because you want to be able to see that there's a future there. As a client working with a different company, you're going to go and work with a company you see a future with, as a case of progression and growth. You're going to grow and learn and develop with that person. So as a hairstylist and the barber, we need to show our clients that there's a journey there to go on with us, right? We're going to take on a journey of your hair, a journey of learning, a journey of growth, journey of development, a journey personally where we get to know each other, those kind of things. And I think that on your first appointment or two, it's so important to try to portray the fact that you want that client to go on a journey with you, that you do want to see their hair long term. And I think that's where like educating them on all these different things is super important, because it allows them to subconsciously see that journey without having to particularly, and then also involving them in stuff like involving them like as a client, involving them in like different deals or social media. I think one of the biggest things for me, I don't work behind the chair, but I think one of the biggest mistakes I see for barbers and hairstylists behind the chair is not tagging their customers on their stories, for example.
What a missed opportunity.
Because it's simple marketing for one, because word of mouth is the best marketing you'll ever have, and social media is essentially virtual word of mouth. Because what happens if I always use a class for examples. So if I'm teaching a class, if I post about the class on my social media, on my story, then everyone who already follows me and who's already in our ecosystem or in our world will see it and maybe be enticed to go to a class. But they've already probably seen this before and not come to a class. Whereas if everyone who's in the class posts about the class, 99% of their followers won't follow me, right? Now, that means if they share it, if they get enough value of the to share what's going on in the class, then 99% of their followers may see us for the first time and may want to get involved. Now, clients work the exact same way. But the best thing is, clients have even better conversion, right, in regards to social media, because social media really, it's a marketing platform. And what you need to pay attention to is who shares your posts and how much conversion you get to customers. What I mean by who shares your post is if you track how many shares you get, you know how much value what you're doing on social media is giving. Because if people aren't sharing it to their world, it means that what you're posting isn't valuable enough to people. They don't see the value in it, so they don't want to share it. So same goes for a service in the barbershop or in the hair salon. So I want to track how many people are sharing it to make sure I'm providing value to people, but then also conversion. And clients have the best conversion because most of the clients will probably have between 200 to maybe 1,500 followers. But I guarantee you, for most part of that, they know at least 50% of them. Meaning that 50% of them will probably engage and look and pay attention to it. So if you tag your client on your story and they share it, which they will because they feel involved, they feel part of the journey, part of what's going on, they'll share it to their world. And I mean, this is what I say to people. You need to let go of the aesthetic sometimes. And I've been there. The part of social media when I was first growing on social media, you can get caught up into the fact of it's a very image-based thing and you want to look cool. But then the sooner you realize that it's about building the life that you want and building a world that gives value to people, the quicker you realize that, the better. Because then it's like with your post, you might not want, most barbers and hairstylists wouldn't want to post every haircut they do on their story if they're working behind the chair because of fear of judgment from other hairstylists and barbers. But that's only going to be the case if you're marketing to hairstylists and barbers. But the question to me would be, why are you marketing to hairstylists and barbers if you're trying to get clients? If you're trying to get clients, your marketing should be to clients. And in that case, if you tag your client and they share it, it might not be the best haircut you've ever done, but to normal people who don't cut hair and they look at that, they'll see the fact that, oh, my friend thinks this place is good enough to share. They think this place is good enough for them to post on there, so I might check it out. And that's how we can start to build and develop. And then it's good because new customers come with the idea of already seeing the journey. They already have that element of trust in you, rather than it just being a just slap bang new client every time. And so it adds into everything that we were just saying.
Yeah, absolutely. All of that is gold. All of that is gold. If you had a magic wand and you could wave it and change anything about the industry at all right now, what would it be?
So what it would be is something that we're already working on, but it's what I call the disparity between the 10% and the 90%. Now, it's not quite as big as a disparity in the salon cosmetology industry, but in the barbering one it is, I think. So what I mean by that is, like, the people in the industry who really want to progress and want to grow and want to elevate the industry, want to start raising their prices, want to charge more, want to really get the value of the industry to be where it really is worth. Now, there's a lot of people like that, and people would often call it the Instagram version of barbering, right? But these people want to develop their careers, the new school idea of barbering, and where it can be worth as much as cosmetology, for example. The cosmetology still has the same issue, but it's not as big a percentage. And what I find that, though, is despite there's so many people on in our industries who want to help progress and want to grow and want to develop and want to charge more and all this kind of stuff. In reality, in the barbering industry, we're still only 10%. If we look at the actual full picture of the barbering industry, there's only really 10% who are in that mindset, maybe 20 at a push. And what's actually happening at the moment, and I don't know why we're working really hard to hopefully be part of that change, because we're creating a hybrid process that takes some of the reasons why barbers don't want to get on board with the new wave of barbering is often because they think it's going to be too complex, too hard. They don't want to upskill. So we're trying to work on that too. But if I could wave a magic wand, it would be to get this 90% to come with us, because the only real way to actually increase the value of the industry and for across the board to everyone be charging more and it be worth more is if everyone is actually doing it, or at least it's like instead of being 10 and 90, it at least being 90 and 10. You know what I mean? Like we've got to change that gap so that we go strong together, because that's the only way that in terms of the general public, we're going to be seen as being the industry that we should be, because cosmetology is a lot further towards that. Like it's a lot further towards that, because I think if you ask the general public, they kind of know you can earn very good money in the cosmetology industry. Whereas in the barbering industry, I think it's only in certain communities people really are aware, and I mean people outside the industry, that people are really aware that barbering, you can earn a good amount of money in barbering, you can build a good career, and you can have good leverage and build wealth. But even in the cosmetology industry, I think still some people think that you can't. And I think to really get to that point where we are worth that much, and when I say worth that much, I mean worth the value that we're actually worth, I think that we need to have it as a unity where we're all together, progressing, learning, growing, and charging what we should be charging what our time is actually worth. But as I said, that can only happen if we all do it. So if I could wave a magic wand, it would be to wave it everyone so that everyone is on board with that growth.
No, I love that. The excuse that I often hear from barbers is that their clients are unwilling to pay more money, or they're unwilling to spend more time in the chair.
So the time in the chair one, I can agree on in regards to like it's a valid and it's not a valid excuse, because to be perfectly honest, even back when I was living in England, I would still have some clients who would get pissed if I spent longer than 20, 30 minutes on their hair, right? But I also would have clients who would get pissed if I spent less than 45. So I can see, I know that's a valid and an invalid point. But the one about the prices, the reason why I don't see that as a valid point is because if we all did it, they would have no choice. And that's
understood.
If it was a 90 and a 10 rather than a 10 and a 90, there would be no choice, because there's such a disparity. And charging a lot more is still not as common as charging a lot less. It is harder to raise your prices, and that's why I understand it is a valid point in that way, because I understand that it can be challenging for some people to do that. But at the same point, then I think it also depends on, like, reality is now it depends on where you're working, it depends on what community you're working within, it depends on how you've networked yourself, depends on what clientele base you have. And so it can be changed, but I understand their sort of point, but at the same point, I think it's more so down to fear rather than actually thinking it can't happen, because there's so many people doing it now. It can happen. It's very obvious it can happen. They just don't believe it's going to be happening for them.
I totally agree. And this reminds me of a conversation with somebody here on the podcast who you know, Sean Ralston. You know Sean?
Yeah, Sean. I love Sean.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts of my conversation with Sean was where he talked about him working in a barbershop or having a barbershop in a small town, because he has his own barbershop in the small town, and trying to break down the cultural barrier of guys in the small town who don't want to spend a lot on a haircut and don't want to spend a lot of time in the chair, which both are kind of underpinned by the general cultural element of, a guy shouldn't care that much about how his hair looks. And so I love this because it's very easy to see how this can take place in a small town. But he slowly but surely has shown them that a better haircut is going to take a little bit longer, but a better haircut is going to make you look better. And and that is just generally positive. And if you're getting this better outcome every time you go to the barbershop by looking better, it's going to be worth paying a little bit more for it.
Yeah.
It's going to be it's going to be worth the extra money. It's going to be worth the extra time. And so he's changed the culture to some degree, at least, amongst his clients there, both in his chair and probably in the other chairs in his salon. He's changed the culture in this little small town to get guys to care a little bit better about looking a lot better.
Yeah, I agree. I think one of the best ways that I found to do that is with a tier system for pricing. And what I mean by that is, like, you could have just, like, you haven't got to create a complete tier system if you don't want to, because, I mean, in our shop, we do based on, like, the level of barber you have. But more so what I mean is, like, have all of your services that you normally have, and then just put one slightly higher, more prestige, more VIP service on there. And just put it on there. You're never going to lose anything by having it on there, because the clients, if they want to, can still book the appointment they normally have. But what you do is you open yourself up to a slightly different demographic. You open yourself up on your booking app to people who will look on there and see a VIP service, see an hour appointment, see a $100 haircut for an hour appointment, and be like, you're going to get a certain clientele who are going to, that's what I want. I want the best I can get. And because I always think you've got two types of, like, stereotypically and traditionally, I think with guys, you have two types of guys. I'm going to take, in England, like, it's quite low pricing, but I'm going to use it for an example. In America, let's imagine $30, right? You're going to have $30 as your point in general, where you might say there's going to be a certain type of guy that will never, ever, ever pay over $30 ever in his head, because he doesn't believe, no matter what it is, it's just a haircut, it's not worth it. And then you're going to have the guy who won't ever pay anything under $50 because he doesn't believe in anything less than that. It's going to be a terrible haircut. So you've got two demographics you can go for. Now, if your demographic is this one and you want to get to this one, you don't have to just ditch these straight away. You just open yourself up to this one first. And what will happen is a couple of them are booking, and your existing clientele, right? Everyone loves an ego thing, right? People will see someone getting this better haircut. Haircut looks way nicer. The service looks way better. Someone's going to ask, what's this? And they'll say, oh, that's the new service I put on. Like, it's been on there. You could have booked it if you wanted to. It'd be like, there you go.
So wait,
next thing you know, they're going to book on.
But wait, you're not giving me the best haircut you can give me?
I am giving you the best haircut for the time you book.
There you go. And
then that's all you have to say.
Yeah, that's right.
And then it just proves the point to them. It's like, I'm going to do the best I can in the time I have and time I'm given. I'm not going to charge you. I'm not going to force you into having more time, but if you want that, then you book this one. And then next thing you know, you'll start to get a conversion rate of 10%, 20%. People start to come over. And between then, your new clients and the new demographic and the ones from here moving up, you'll all of a sudden get fully booked at this price and won't have any room for this price. And that's where, this is why we did a tier system in terms of the shop, because then for the guys who we have first coming on board as barbers or trainees and apprentices, we keep them on the lower price so that you can still, if you want the lower price, you can still come and get a haircut of the same standard for the lower price. But there is also this one. And I think that's a good way to bridge it in, because I know a lot of barbers, as you said, have that fear. Now, a lot of barbers don't. A lot of barbers would just be like, fuck it, I'm going to charge that much. That's fine. But a lot of barbers, and I think the 90%, have that little bit of fear over, I don't think my clients would want this. And that's why I say to them, well, don't try and make your clients have that then. Just try and open yourself up to newer clients who want that, because some people want that. Open yourself up to it. You haven't got to force yourself to do it. You haven't got to change everything about your shop. Just have that one extra bit of service on there, VIP, and you'll watch your life change in the shop.
I love it. It's amazing. So would you recommend, because I can hear the listeners thinking about this, is this a, let's say your normal haircut service now is a 30-minute deal, and let's say it's $30 for the simplicity of the math. Would you suggest the premium, the VIP service being 60 minutes and $60? Is it a doubling of time and a doubling of money, would you say?
That's what I would say personally. Yeah. And then I think based on that, I mean, I'm one of the people, I don't often believe in increasing my prices without increasing my value that I'm giving. So, for example, like if I went from, I don't know, let's say they wanted to go from 60 to 100 at some point based on availability. But I don't like going just on availability. Like for me personally, what I probably would do is, even if it's just giving out a little hand towel, like a disposable hand towel just to wipe down, something like that, that's the kind of little details that can bridge you from 60 to 100. Like 60 could just be the initial, right, I'm giving you a better haircut, better service, you're going to get the full shebang, so you're getting 30 minutes for $30 or 60 for 60. But then when you want to increase your price from 60 to 100, to me that's like when, little disposable hand towel, then you could be like, I don't know, one of the best things we do in our shop is 5 minutes with a steamer for the full VIP service. You don't get like a service with the steamer. You have to pay extra if you want the whole beard service and whatever. But like just 5 minutes of your service will be just lie down, hot towel on a steamer. That's it. But people go crazy over that because it's like a little bit of a spa treatment. Essentially, it's not because it's just for the barber. It's a bit of a break. You get 5 minutes, go get a coffee. Like you can just make a coffee quickly or have a bite of your lunch, whatever. Because they're just chilling, they're relaxing. But that's the kind of little things that I would add on if I wanted to bridge from 60 to 100, because in my mind, they've got to be getting something extra to be paying a lot more. But yes, so for the initial jump, I would say 60.
Or a shampoo, right? There's a lot of, a $30 haircut, there's 30 minutes. In at least the barbers I know, that does not include a shampoo. You don't have enough time for that. But a lot of clients, even guys, love a shampoo. I mean, it feels great.
They just wouldn't choose
relaxing.
That I always find that this is what I say to my guys in the shop. Don't ask someone if they want a shampoo if it's part of their service. Like if you're doing it, like a lot of times if you say to them like, oh, do you want me to wash? Do you want me to get a shampoo? Most of them, even at the price point, sometimes will be like, if they've never had it done before, like, no, it's okay, don't worry about it. I'm like, don't ask, just say, bring them to the basin. And even like, again, this is the kind of thing, if you want to upsell it, right? If you want to maybe do it once for free, they'll pay the extra, whatever it is, $5-10 next time for a hair wash if they've got it done once, because they're going to lie there, be like, oh my God, this is amazing. Next thing you know, every time they're getting the same thing. And when it comes to upselling, right? So I always think like not upselling, but leveling up the customer in terms of what they have. I always think that a lot of people will try to just go one level up. So sometimes they might say like, let me just line your beard up this one time, or let me just put a bit of product in this one time. Whereas I always think that when it comes to like kind of going up in price, you're going to get a 10% conversion on average, right? About 10%, but like 90% drop down. Whereas what I often do, if I'm ever feeling generous and I want to go, right, let's upscale something, I'm going to upsell you to the very top point, Why? Because 10% of you will probably still stay there and you'll see the value in it. Then the 90% will filter down all of these options rather than just from here to here. So like you might get some, if you went from like, I don't know, just a haircut customer, and for one time you gave them like a full head massage, facial, steamer, beard, everything, 10% of them might stay there. And then like 10% of them might drop down to hair and beard. 10% of them might drop to hair and hair wash. 10%. So you're going to get a lot better kind of conversion rate on the higher price points than just going from haircut to haircut and wash. Because you're still only probably going to get 10% to stay there.
So you're giving them a peek at everything that is available, and they're gonna
not all the time and not very often, but like occasionally if I do that, like a little peek at the full service. Yeah. So I think to me it works a little bit better than doing it, but again, it's all dependent on your demographic and your people.
And hold on, are you giving a free peek? I mean, are you giving the full kind of Monty for free once, and you tell them? You communicate.
Well, they'll still pay for what they booked in for.
Okay. Yes.
So, like, if they booked in for a haircut, let's say they booked in for a 30-minute appointment, and I had the time. I had no one booked in. There was no walk-in, and I gave them the full hour, full like detail hair wash, like steamer, towels, everything. Yeah, I wouldn't charge them for the extra, because in my mind it's part of like an investment of like that customer may like every 10% of them customers that do it on that will probably book the full whack after, and I'm not doing anything with that time anyway. If I had like, I wouldn't just do it if I didn't have the time to do it. It would be a case of just being smart with it.
Right, I love it. Do you have any hair horror stories?
With my own hair, definitely. The first time I ever bleached my own hair, I like. It was the reason why I ended up having a buzz cut in the first place was because I bleached my own hair and I had a long crop, and the middle of my hair fell out. That's why I buzzed my hair off in the first place. But I liked it in the end. In regards to me cutting hair, I only really honestly remember one. It was actually my wife's younger brother. I mean, it was like probably the third or fourth haircut that I think I'd ever done. And as I said, my first haircut was actually not too bad. My first few, I think I got a bit confident, and all I did was I just chased it a bit too high. That's all we'll say for that one. But it was at the very start. and I never ever did that again. So
he was family, so many. That's okay.
Yeah.
That's what family is for when you're
exactly.
a beginning hairdresser.
Exactly. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like like everyone, like I've messed up haircuts. Everyone's messed up haircuts, but that's probably the only one I would say was like a real horror, like where it haunted me because I had to actually look at it because he was family and I had to be around the haircuts. But it was a good lesson. But I honestly think that people struggle to comprehend how much they're going to not like their own haircuts. And I think people struggle with that mentally. Whereas for me, it's like, I'm happy not liking them. If I like my haircuts too much, I feel like I'm not in a good place because I need to be thinking about what's going to come, what's better. And this is what it always put it down to. With the best advice I give people about, we said that one haircut a week, practice. Because when you first start cutting hair, you go from literally not being able to cut hair, not knowing anything about hair whatsoever, to probably being not too bad in like a year, 2 years, right? Like, I'm not saying you're going to be great in a year, 2 years, but in a year to 18 months to 2 years, you'll be like, okay, you're competent enough that you can do some haircuts, right? Mm-hmm. And that's from nothing to here. The reason you get from here to here in such a relatively short space of time is practice. But once you get here, most people stop practicing. And what I mean by that is they stop cutting hair outside of the shop. Because name me one other industry, and I say this a lot, but name me one other industry where anyone practices during their performances. No one does. Why would you practice during performance? But what do hairdressers and barbers do every day? Practice things. Just try it out. See if we can do it. In the middle of a service for a customer. You've got to learn to allow yourself to be uncomfortable, but you need to make yourself be as comfortable as possible whilst being uncomfortable. There's a reason why athletes and professionals and artists, they have like pre-game rituals and they do stuff to get themselves as comfortable as possible until they're about to be uncomfortable. So for me, if I'm trying to practice something, that's a highly uncomfortable situation. If I try and practice something with a paying customer, with a certain time frame and a line of people waiting afterwards, right? I've got to meet the expectations of everyone involved around me. That's too much pressure for me to practice something. I want to practice it where the only thing I'm uncomfortable about is the haircut or the technique. So I'm just away from all pressure, give myself the best chance of success. And the biggest difference from where you are now to where you want to be in anybody is just practice. That's all it is. Because we have hairstylists and barbers have the best mindset ever when they first start. They really do. You're trying to convince everyone you can do it before you can because you're trying to just practice as much as you can. You're telling everyone you can cut hair even when you know you can't, so you get opportunities to cut hair, right? You're open to criticism. You're open to learning. You're trying everything, trying new things. And then we become competent enough and everyone just kind of weans off that. And so like when it comes to like developing your career and doing new things, educating, showcasing, getting sponsored, creating a business, opening a shop, whatever it is, you've still got to do the same mindset as when you first started. Right, you've got to create the perception that you can do this. It's like any promotion. You've got to think of our industry, like I have to think of it as one big job, right? One big company. So like to get a promotion in any company, normally in any other job, what would you do? You show them that you can already do the job. You present to them essentially by your own hard work, I can do this job anyway. Look at me, I'm doing the job anyway for free. Give me this job. That's the way I think about any part of our industry. I'm going to put out the perception that I can do it. I'm going to show you I can teach so that I teach. I'm going to show you I can do editorial, so I do editorial. I'm going to show you I love this brand, so I get sponsored by this brand. Because, like, for example, I'm not sponsored by anyone, but if I was sponsored by someone, if I wanted to be, for example, the way I would do it is just act like you're sponsored by them. If you acted like you're sponsored by them, at some point, you probably will get sponsored by them. And little things like that, again, I don't think we're in not overcomplicating it, we're overcomplicating it. But to go back to what I said earlier.
Yeah, I love it. Well, normally I would say any last words for the community, but I don't know if it gets any better than that. So you are barber.josh.o.p on Instagram. Josh, OP stands for Omira Patel. And you've just been amazing here. So thank you so much. And I hope people check you out. Everybody check out his DFS education, because you can tell this is education just oozes from his pores. It's so natural for you. So thank you so much. Thank you so much for these episodes. It's been amazing.
I appreciate you a lot. Thank you guys for having me. It's been a pleasure. As you said, anyone needs anything, just let me know.